in our country today. And the truth is that in West Virginia, in my state of Vermont, and all over this country, people are hurting in a way that we have never hurt in 100 years. We are dealing with the worst pandemic, which has now claimed over 160,000 lives, the worst pandemic since the Spanish flu of 1918. We're looking at a major economic collapse, the likes of which we have not seen since the Great Depression of the 1930s. And the reality of that is that in West Virginia, in Vermont, there are tens and tens and tens of thousands of people who have lost their jobs. People who have never been unemployed in their lives are unemployed right now. Small businesses going out of business. We're looking at people when they lose their jobs are losing their health insurance. And they are scared to death about not being able to afford to go to a doctor for them, maybe for their kids right now. We're looking at people who are literally worried about not being able to feed their kids. Because if you don't have any income, you don't have any money in the bank, you're not going to be able to go out and buy the groceries that you need. And in West Virginia and all over this country, people by the millions are worried about being evicted from their apartments or losing their homes because they just don't have enough money to pay the rent or to pay their mortgages. That is the reality that we're in right now. And on top of that, of course, we have children not going to school, parents not knowing whether it's a good idea or not to send their kids to school, and on it goes. So what we are trying to do this evening, and we've done it just earlier today in Kentucky, and we'll do it around the country, is hear the stories, the real life stories of people who are struggling. And the demand that we have is that short term, right now, the United States Congress has got to respond to the pain and the fear that so many of our people are experiencing. What does that mean? It means is that I think most of you know, a number of months ago, Congress did the right thing. Didn't do everything I wanted by any means, but it passed legislation of over $3 trillion, which made sure that if you out there lost your job, in addition to your normal unemployment benefits, you would get $600 a week. That's no small thing. And on top of that, what Congress did is say, we're going to give you a one-time check of $1,200 per person and $500 for your children. And on top of that, we're going to prevent evictions. And we're going to provide substantial amounts of help to hospitals and to cities and to states and to help small businesses retain their employees, et cetera, et cetera. A lot in that bill. And that bill helped a lot of people during these very, very difficult times. And then what happened about 3.5 months ago, as I recall, the US House did the right thing, run by Democrats. But the House said, look, this pandemic is not getting any better. Workers are still hurting. They are still without jobs. They're still without income. And we've got to help them. And what the House did is pass something called the HEROES Bill, which continued that $600 check supplement that people were getting, which continued the $1,200 check per person, which helped small businesses, which provided health care for those people who lost their jobs, and massive amounts of money for cities and towns who today are struggling economically and who have laid off over 1 million workers in the last number of months. So I don't agree with everything that was in the House bill. I would have done things differently. But at least it was a very serious attempt to recognize the pain that people are experiencing in Vermont, in West Virginia, and all over this country. And then the House did what it did. You would have thought that the United States Senate would respond accordingly, or maybe say, well, we agree with you here, we disagree with you there. Let's talk about how we go forward. But the truth is that the Republican-led Senate did nothing. week after week, month after month. Everybody knew when the $600 supplement was going to end. They knew when the $1,200 were going to end. They knew when the help for the cities and the states was going to end. Healthcare was going to, everybody knew it. But the Senate did nothing. And finally, in the last few weeks, the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell basically walked away from the negotiations with the House, and he left that to Treasury Secretary Mnuchin and Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. And they basically said, no, we are not going to continue the $600. We're not going to provide what the working people of this country need. And then Trump came up with some phony executive orders, which at best, I don't even know if they're going to be implemented, because you all know Trump, he says one thing, but doesn't really mean that it's truthful. At best, $300 a week for the next 5 weeks. I'm not sure, because this is kind of a new program that the states will be able to even implement that. No money, no eviction prevention. People will still be able to be evicted. No money for nutrition. No money for one-time payments for families. No money for cities, for hospitals, for states. Basically doing virtually nothing to help working people. And what we are trying to do around the country is to put pressure on Republican senators in West Virginia and elsewhere to say, you cannot ignore the pain that is going on in your state, that what Trump did was nowhere near what has to be done, that we need to maintain that $600 supplement for unemployment. We need to get those $1,200 or more checks out to people, and that we have got to make sure that people in America are not going hungry. Now, on top of all of that, it's important to understand that not only do we have to respond short term, we have got to respond long term. And that is create a government, and I know Paula Jean understands this, create a government and a nation that represents all of the people and not just the wealthy and the 1%. And that means we have got to raise wages in America. I know in West Virginia, you got people who are working, for starvation wages where you can't make it on $8 or $9 an hour. And that's why we're going to raise that minimum wage to $15 an hour. It's why in America we have to join the rest of the industrialized world and guarantee health care to all people as a human right through Medicare for all. It means that we have to make public colleges and universities tuition free, that we've got to deal with the existential threat of climate change, that we have to create millions of jobs rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure, because people need work right now. So short term, what we've got to do is demand that the Congress, and right now especially the Senate, do the right thing and stop ignoring the pain of so many workers who have lost their jobs and are struggling. Long term, we need to take on the wealthy and the powerful